The grand hall of orbital station Kepler-7 was full of noise and movement. Hundreds of beings from different worlds stood in groups, talking about trade deals and peace agreements. Some were tall and covered in scales. Others had wings that folded against their backs. A few floated near the ceiling, their bodies glowing with soft light. The air smelled strange, a mix of different atmospheres and foods that each species brought with them. Doyen stood near a long table filled with drinks and food. He wore a simple gray uniform with a security badge on his chest. His black hair was cut short, and his face showed no emotion as he looked down at the datapad in his hands. He scrolled through the evening's schedule, checking which ambassadors were supposed to leave and which ones were staying overnight. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Next to him, Hana was talking to a creature that looked like a giant mantis. She was a scientist who studied alien biology, and she loved her work. Her eyes were bright with excitement as she explained something about Earth's ocean ecosystems. The mantis creature, Ambassador Velthar, clicked its mandibles in what Doyen had learned was a sign of interest. Doyen glanced at his watch. 6 more minutes until his shift ended. Then he could go back to his quarters, eat something that didn't smell like sulfur, and sleep. He had been working for 10 hours straight and his feet hurt. The grand hall was built to impress visitors. The ceiling was made of transparent metal that showed the gas giant below them. Purple and blue clouds swirled across the planet's surface, lit by distant stars. The walls were covered in symbols from every species in the galactic community. Humans had only been part of this community for 40 years, so their symbol was small and placed near the bottom. It was just Earth, a simple blue circle. Most species didn't think much about humans. They were new, weak, and soft. No claws, no thick skin, no venom, no natural weapons at all. In a galaxy full of predators and prey, humans seemed to be nothing special. They were just there, filling out forms and attending meetings. Doyen didn't care what other species thought. He had a job to do, and he did it. Nothing more, nothing less. The conversation around him continued. An ambassador with 4 arms was arguing about mining rights with a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish. A group of reptilian delegates stood near the windows, their scales changing color as they talked. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. Then the doors exploded. The sound was so loud that Doyen's ears rang. Metal and debris flew across the hall and beings scattered in every direction. Alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed from the ceiling. Doyen's datapad fell from his hands and clattered on the floor. Standing in the destroyed doorway was something out of a nightmare. It was huge, at least 8 feet tall, with muscles that bulged under gray skin. Its arms were as thick as tree trunks, ending in hands with claws that looked like they could cut through steel. Its face was all angles and sharp teeth with eyes that glowed red in the emergency lighting. It wore no clothes except a belt with strange symbols carved into it. Grath, a Kravik warrior, had arrived. Everyone in the hall knew what a Kravik was. They were apex predators from a death world where everything tried to kill everything else. Kraviks hunted for sport and for honor. When a Kravik entered a blood rage, it would not stop until it found a worthy opponent to fight. Many species had lost warriors to Kravik challenges over the centuries. Grath opened his mouth and roared. The sound shook the walls. It was a challenge, a declaration of intent. He was here to hunt. The reaction was immediate. The mantis creatures froze in place, their instincts telling them not to move. The bird-like talons launched themselves into the air, flying toward the exits. The armored Thurons, who were known as warriors themselves, took several steps back. Even the floating energy beings dimmed their lights and retreated to the corners of the room. Fear filled the grand hall like smoke. Grath's red eyes scanned the crowd. He was looking for someone strong, someone worthy. His gaze passed over the cowering ambassadors, the fleeing delegates, the frozen security guards from various species who were too terrified to move. Then his eyes stopped. He was looking at Doyen. The human hadn't moved. He was still standing next to the refreshment table looking down at something. For a moment, Grath thought the human was frozen with fear like the mantis creatures. But then he realized the human was looking at his datapad, which he had picked up from the floor. Grath's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Finally, a being with courage, a being who didn't run. This human would be his trophy. The Kravik warrior began to move. Each step made the floor shake. His claws extended, gleaming in the light. He crossed the hall in seconds, moving with speed that seemed impossible for something so large. The crowd parted before him, beings throwing themselves out of his way. Grath raised his claws above his head. His roar echoed off the walls. He was 10 feet away, then 5, then 3. The human would look up now. The human would see death coming and would scream or fight or beg. Doyen looked up. His eyes met Grath's for exactly 1 second. There was no fear in them, no excitement, no anger. Just a kind of tired recognition, like someone who had been interrupted during paperwork. Doyen looked back down at his datapad. "Not mine," he said. His voice was calm and quiet. Grath's charge stopped. His claws froze in the air. His roar died in his throat. He stood there confused, trying to understand what had just happened. The entire grand hall went silent. Every being, no matter what species, stared at the human and the Kravik. The emergency alarms still blared, but no one heard them anymore. "What?" Grath's voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. Doyen sighed and checked his watch. "Not mine," he repeated. "I'm off duty in 6 minutes." He gestured across the hall with one hand, not even bothering to look at the Kravik. "If you want to fight someone, the security office is over there. You need to file a formal challenge through proper channels." Grath stared at him. In all his years as a warrior, in all his hunts across a dozen worlds, nothing like this had ever happened. Prey ran, warriors fought. But this human was doing neither. He was treating a blood rage like it was a minor inconvenience. "You dare refuse my challenge?" Grath's voice rose with anger. Doyen finally looked up properly, and now there was a hint of annoyance in his eyes. "I'm not refusing anything. I'm telling you there's a process. You can't just storm into a diplomatic station and start attacking people. There are forms." "Forms?" Grath repeated the word like it was a foreign concept. "Forms," Doyen confirmed. He tapped his datapad. "Challenge request form 27B. Takes about 10 minutes to fill out. I can approve it tomorrow when I'm back on duty." Hana had been watching this entire exchange with wide eyes. Now she slowly walked toward them, her hands raised in a calming gesture. Grath, right? I'm Hana. Maybe we can talk about this?" Grath ignored her. His focus was entirely on Doyun. "I have issued a challenge. You must respond. It is the way of warriors." Doyen checked his watch again. 4 minutes now. "Look, I understand you have your traditions, but this is a neutral station. We have rules. You want to challenge someone, you follow the rules." "Rules?" Grath spat the word. "There are no rules in combat. Only strength." "Sure," Doyen said. "But we're not in combat. We're in a diplomatic hall during a reception. Combat requires proper authorization." He gestured to his security badge. "Do you see this? It means I'm working. When I'm working, I follow procedures, and the procedure says challenges go through proper channels." Around them, the other beings were starting to whisper, some in confusion, some in disbelief. The human was arguing with a Kravik about paperwork. It was the strangest thing any of them had ever seen. Grath's claws twitched. His anger was growing, but so was his confusion. He had traveled to this station specifically to find strong opponents. The Kraviks had heard about humans, these strange new beings who had no natural weapons but somehow survived in a dangerous galaxy. He wanted to test them to see if they were truly worthy. But this human wasn't testing anything. He was looking at a datapad and talking about forms. "What if I simply fight you now?" Grath asked, his voice low and dangerous. Doyen shrugged. "Then you'll be assaulting a station official. That's a different form, 37C, I think. Plus, you'll be breaking about 6 different interstellar laws. The station will ban you, and you'll probably face charges from your own government." He said all of this in the same tone someone might use to explain why a door was locked. Grath's watch beeped. Doyun looked at it, then at Grath. "Would you look at that? My shift just ended." He pressed a button on his badge and it made a soft chirping sound. "I'm officially off the clock now." He set his datapad down on the table carefully. Then he looked directly into Grath's glowing red eyes. "Now it's mine." What happened next was not what anyone expected. Grath roared and swung his massive clawed hand at Doyen's head. The strike was fast enough to tear through metal. But Doyen wasn't there anymore. He had dropped to the ground, rolled sideways, and come up next to one of the serving tables. The Kravik's claws hit empty air with a sound like thunder. Grath spun around, searching for his target. Doyen was standing calmly, picking up a chair. It was a simple metal chair, the kind used for guests during diplomatic meetings. "Last chance," Doyen said. "Walk away and file the paperwork. I'll process it tomorrow morning." "First thing," Grath answered by charging again. His feet pounded against the floor like drums. His claws extended fully, ready to rip and tear. Doyen threw the chair, not at Grath's head or body. He threw it at the Kravik's legs. The chair spun through the air and tangled in Grath's feet right as he was taking a step. The huge warrior stumbled, crashed into a serving table, and sent plates and glasses flying everywhere. The watching aliens gasped. Some of them had never seen a human fight before. This was nothing like how other species fought. There was no honor challenge, no testing of strength, no ritual combat. The human was just using whatever was nearby. Hana grabbed Velthar's arm. The Mantis ambassador was frozen in shock. "You need to get everyone out of here," she said urgently. "Now." But the human started fighting. Velthar clicked in confusion. "He said he wouldn't." "No," Hana corrected. "He said it wasn't his problem while he was on duty. Now he's off duty." She pushed the ambassador toward the exit. "Go, take the others. This is about to get messy." Velthar didn't understand, but he recognized the serious tone in Hana's voice. He began ushering the other delegates toward the side exits. Most of them didn't need encouragement. They wanted to be far away from the fighting. Grath pushed himself up from the wreckage of the table. Food and broken plates slid off his back. His red eyes were blazing with anger now. "You fight without honor," he snarled. "I fight to win," Doyen replied. He had moved again, putting another table between himself and the Kravik. "There's a difference," Grath charged once more. This time he was ready for tricks. When Doyen grabbed another chair, Grath simply smashed through it with his arm. The chair broke into pieces. Grath kept coming, expecting to finally reach the human. Doyen had already moved backward toward the refreshment area. His hand found a pitcher of blue liquid, something one of the aquatic species had brought. He threw the entire pitcher at the floor in front of Grath. The liquid splashed everywhere, making the floor slippery. Grath's next step skidded. He tried to catch his balance, but his momentum was too much. He slid sideways, crashed into another table, and went down hard. "See, this is exactly why we have safety regulations," Doyen said. He was barely breathing hard. "Someone could get hurt," Grath roared in frustration. He was one of the greatest warriors of his people. He had hunted prey on dozens of worlds. He had defeated champions from other species in single combat. But this human kept moving, kept using objects, kept refusing to fight properly. The Kravik pushed himself up again. This time he didn't charge. He moved more carefully, watching the human, trying to predict what he would do next. Doyen stood near the wall now. He had picked up a piece of metal from the broken door. It was about 3 feet long, jagged on one end. He held it loosely in one hand. "You're tired," Doyen observed. His voice was calm, like he was making small talk. "Kraviks are ambush hunters, right? Quick kills. You're not built for long fights," it was true. Grath could feel his muscles burning. He had been fighting for less than 5 minutes, but the constant movement, the surprises, the frustration, all of it was draining his energy faster than normal combat would. "I will not stop," Grath growled. "I will tear you apart." "Probably," Doyen agreed. "If you can catch me." That's a big if, though. Hana had stayed behind after helping evacuate the other delegates. Now she stood at a safe distance, watching the fight with a worried expression. She knew Doyen had military training. She knew he was good at his job. But Grath was massive, and one hit from those claws would be fatal. "Doyen, maybe you should," she started to say. "Not now, Hana," Doyen interrupted, never taking his eyes off Grath. "I'm working." "You said you were off duty," she pointed out. "I'm off my shift," he corrected. "Fighting a Kravik warrior counts as work." Grath moved again, but this time he was smarter. Instead of charging in a straight line, he grabbed a table and threw it at Doyen. The table spun through the air like a giant frisbee. Doyen ducked under it. The table crashed into the wall behind him, leaving a dent in the metal. But Grath had used the distraction to close the distance. He was right there, claws raised, finally close enough to strike. Doyen's makeshift metal weapon came up and caught Grath's arm. The metal bent, but it stopped the claws from reaching Doyen's face. The human twisted sideways, using the Kravik's own force against him, and Grath stumbled past. They were both breathing hard now, Grath from exertion and anger, Doyen from the adrenaline and focus. "You fight well for prey," Grath admitted grudgingly. "I'm not prey," Doyen said, "and you're not hunting. This is a diplomatic station, remember? There are still rules, even in a fight." "What rules?" Grath demanded. Doyun gestured at the ceiling where the emergency alarms were still flashing. Rule 1, security has already called for backup. They'll be here in about 3 minutes. Rule 2, this entire fight is being recorded. Every camera in this hall is watching us. Rule 3, you're in my territory now and I know where everything is. As if to prove his point, Doyun reached behind him without looking and grabbed a decorative statue from a nearby pedestal. It was made of heavy stone carved in the shape of some alien creature. Rule 4, Doyun continued. I have no pride about how I win. He threw the statue at Grath's legs again. The Kravik tried to dodge, but his tired muscles didn't respond fast enough. The statue hit his knee with a solid thunk. Grath grunted in pain but didn't fall. You cannot defeat me this way, Grath said, limping slightly now. Eventually I will reach you, and when I do, you will die. Maybe, Doyun said again. He was near the windows now, the ones that showed the gas giant below. But how long will it take? 5 more minutes? 10? How tired will you be by then? Grath realized what the human was doing. He wasn't trying to win through strength. He was trying to win through time. By making Grath chase him, by forcing him to waste energy, by dragging the fight out until help arrived or the Kravik collapsed from exhaustion, it was smart. It was practical. It was completely dishonorable. I will show you what a true warrior can do, Grath declared. He gathered his strength for one final overwhelming attack. He would ignore the pain, ignore the tiredness, and put everything into this next charge. The human would not escape. Doyun saw him preparing. His expression remained calm, but his grip on the bent metal piece tightened. Okay, he said quietly. If that's how you want to do this, Grath charged. This time there were no tricks, no hesitation, just raw power and speed. He covered the distance in 2 massive leaps, claws extended, teeth bared, every muscle focused on killing the human. Doyun didn't run. He waited until Grath was almost on top of him. Then he dropped to the floor and rolled to the side. Not away from Grath, but past him under his arms. Grath's momentum carried him forward. His claws hit the window, the transparent metal that showed the gas giant below. The material was strong, designed to withstand incredible pressure. But Grath's claws were designed to tear through anything. The window cracked, not completely. Not enough to break, but enough that warning alarms started screaming even louder. Red emergency lights flashed around the damaged area. Bulkhead doors began sliding shut automatically, sealing off that section of the hall. Grath pulled his claws free and spun around. But Doyun was already on his feet, backing toward one of the exits. That's property damage, Doyun said, slightly out of breath now. That's going to be a lot of paperwork. Before Grath could respond, the main doors opened. Real security forces rushed in, wearing full armor and carrying weapons. There were 6 of them, from different species, all trained for exactly this kind of situation. Freeze, the team leader shouted. Both of you! Doyun immediately raised his hands and dropped his makeshift weapon. Security Officer Doyun, badge number 7734. I'm responding to an unauthorized challenge in accordance with station regulations. Grath looked at the security team, then at Doyun, then at the cracked window. He was tired, frustrated, and confused. This fight had gone nothing like he had planned. Slowly, he lowered his claws. This isn't over, he said to Doyun. Yes, it is, Doyun replied. You're under arrest for assault, property damage, and disturbing the peace. You have the right to contact your embassy. You'll be held in detention until a hearing can be arranged. He paused. That's all in the station regulations, section 12. Grath stared at him. You're insane. Your entire species is insane. Doyun shrugged. Maybe, but we follow the rules. As the security team put restraints on Grath and led him away, Hana finally approached Doyun. She looked him over quickly, checking for injuries. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine, he said. Then he sighed deeply and looked around at the destroyed hall. Tables overturned. Food everywhere. A cracked window. Broken furniture scattered across the floor. News traveled fast in the galactic community. By the next morning, every species on Station Kepler 7 had heard about the fight. By afternoon, the story had spread to neighboring stations. By evening, diplomatic channels across 3 sectors were buzzing with reports about the human who had defeated a Kravik warrior using furniture and procedure. The story changed depending on who told it. Some versions said the human had supernatural powers. Others claimed he had used forbidden technology. A few insisted the whole thing was a trick, that the Kravik must have been sick or injured before the fight started. But the security footage didn't lie. Ambassadors watched it again and again, trying to understand what they had witnessed. In the station's detention area, Grath sat alone in a holding cell. The cell was large enough for beings his size, with a sleeping platform and basic facilities. The walls were smooth metal, and the door was sealed with an energy field. He could have broken out if he wanted to. Kravik's strength was enough to bend the metal bars, but he didn't try. That would be dishonorable. He had been captured according to the station's laws. As much as he hated it, he would accept the consequences. What he couldn't accept was the confusion. Grath had fought dozens of battles. He understood combat. He understood strategy, tactics, the flow of a fight. But what happened in the Grand Hall made no sense to him. The human hadn't fought like a warrior. He hadn't even fought like prey. He had fought like someone trying to solve a problem. And Grath was the problem. Every action Doyen took was calculated to be annoying, to waste time, to make the fight as inconvenient as possible. The door to the detention area opened. Grath looked up, expecting guards. Instead, he saw Hana. She carried a datapad and wore a white coat over her regular clothes. Her expression was professional but kind. She stopped outside his cell and pressed a button on the wall. The energy field flickered but didn't disappear completely. A smaller opening appeared, large enough to talk through but not large enough for Grath to reach through. "I'm here to do an evaluation," Hana explained. "It's standard procedure after an incident like this. I need to make sure you're not injured, and I need to ask some questions about what happened." Grath's eyes narrowed. "You're the other human." "From the hall?" "Yes, my name is Hana. I'm a xenobiologist. That means I study how different species work." She pulled up a chair and sat down, making herself comfortable. "How are you feeling?" "Angry," Grath said immediately. "That's understandable." "Anything physical? Pain, dizziness, breathing problems?" Grath thought about it. His knee still hurt where the statue had hit it. His shoulders were sore from crashing into tables. But these were minor injuries, nothing serious. "I am well enough." Hana made notes on her datapad. "Good, now I have to ask you some questions. You don't have to answer them, but it might help us understand what happened." "I know what happened," Grath said, his voice bitter. "I was humiliated by a weak creature who refused to fight properly." "Doyen isn't weak," Hana said mildly. "He's just different. Your species and mine have different approaches to conflict. Your species is cowardly." "No," Hana corrected, her voice becoming firmer. "We're practical. There's a difference." She pulled up something on her datapad and turned it so Grath could see through the opening. It showed an image of a human running across a plain, following an animal with 4 legs and long horns. "This is how humans used to hunt. Thousands of years ago," Hana explained. "We didn't have claws or sharp teeth or venom. We weren't the strongest or the fastest. But we could run for a very long time. We would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal was too tired to keep going. Then we would kill it." Grath studied the image. "Persistence hunting. Some species use this method. Yes, but humans took it further than most. We're incredibly good at it. Our bodies are designed for endurance, not power. We sweat to cool down so we can keep moving. We can eat almost anything to maintain our energy. We can operate on very little sleep when we need to." She pulled up another image, this one showing humans working together to build something. "And we're social. We work in groups, we share information, we create tools to make up for what our bodies can't do." "What does this have to do with yesterday?" Grath demanded. "Everything," Hana said. "When Doyen fought you, he wasn't being cowardly. He was using the same strategy humans have always used. Make the fight last longer. Use tools. Wait for the opponent to get tired. It's how we survive." Grath was silent for a moment. Then he said, "He showed no fear. I have fought many beings. They all fear death when it comes for them. The human did not." "Oh, he was afraid," Hana said. "Trust me. He just didn't let it control him. Humans are good at that too. We feel fear, but we keep working anyway." She leaned forward slightly, her voice becoming softer. "Can I tell you something about Doyen? Before he came to this station, he was in the military. He served on Earth during the border conflicts. He's seen combat before. Real combat. Against other humans with weapons far more deadly than claws. He knows what it's like to face death." "Then why did he run from me?" Grath asked. "If he's a warrior, why not fight with honor?" "Because he didn't see the point," Hana said simply. "You wanted a fight to prove your worth. He just wanted to finish his shift and go home. From his perspective, fighting you was unnecessary work, so he tried to avoid it by telling you to follow procedure. Grath shook his head slowly. I cannot understand this. Where I come from, a challenge must be answered. To refuse is to admit weakness. Where I come from, Hana countered, refusing unnecessary violence is a sign of wisdom, not weakness. We have a saying on Earth, choose your battles. It means you should only fight when it truly matters. Every other time find a different solution. Like throwing furniture, Grath said, his tone sarcastic. Like throwing furniture, Hana agreed with a small smile. Whatever works. There was a long pause. The detention area was quiet except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Finally, Grath spoke again, his voice thoughtful. I have heard stories about humans. Other species say you are weak. They say you have no place in the galaxy, that you will not survive. But I do not think this is true. What do you think? Hana asked. I think humans are hunters, Grath said slowly. Not like Kravix. Not like any species I know, but hunters nonetheless. You do not kill quickly. You kill slowly over time by making your prey too tired to fight back. It is effective and disturbing. Hana considered this. That's probably the most accurate thing anyone has said about us. We're not flashy. We're not impressive. But we're very, very persistent. And we're patient. We can wait as long as we need to. The other human, Doyen. If I had continued fighting, if I had ignored the furniture and the tricks, if I'd caught him. Grath paused. What would he have done? Hana's expression became serious. He would have killed you if he could. Not because he wanted to. Not for honor or glory, but because you would have left him no choice. Humans don't like violence, but we're very good at it when we have to be. That's maybe the scariest thing about us. Grath processed this information. The more he learned about humans, the more confused he became. They were contradictions. Peaceful but dangerous. Weak but persistent. They avoided fights but won them through unconventional means. Your species will cause problems in the galaxy, he finally said. We already have, Hana admitted. Most species don't know what to do with us. We don't fit into the normal categories. We're not purely predator or prey. We're something else. Something in between. She stood up, preparing to leave. Is there anything else you need? Food, water, medical attention? No, Grath said. Then, surprising himself, he added, Thank you for explaining. I still do not agree with your methods, but I understand them better now. Hana smiled. That's all we can really ask for. Understanding. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Grath, for what it's worth, Doyen was impressed by you. He said you were one of the most dangerous opponents he's ever faced. He meant it as a compliment. After she left, Grath sat in silence. He thought about the fight, about everything Hana had said, about the strange, confusing species called humans. On Earth, there was a story about a race between a fast rabbit and a slow turtle. The rabbit was confident in its speed and took breaks during the race, assuming it would win easily. The turtle just kept moving forward, never stopping, and eventually crossed the finish line first. Grath didn't know this story. But if he had, he would have understood immediately why it described humans perfectly. Meanwhile, in the administrative offices, Doyen was indeed doing paperwork. Mountains of it. Incident reports, damage assessments, witness statements, security reviews. His desk was covered in data pads, each one showing a different form that needed to be filled out. 2 other humans had arrived to help. Teho was a diplomat, older than Doyen, with gray in his hair and permanent worry lines on his forehead. Mina was a cultural liaison, young and energetic, who had been sent to the station specifically to help smooth relations between humans and other species. You couldn't have just let security handle it from the beginning? Taiho asked, rubbing his temples. I was off duty, Doyen said, not looking up from his work. Personal time. I can defend myself during personal time. 3 days after the incident, Ambassador Velthar sat in his private quarters writing a report to the Hive Collective. His mandibles clicked rhythmically as he worked, a sign of deep thought among his species. The report was difficult to write. How could he explain what he had witnessed? His people valued logic, order, and predictability, but humans seemed to operate on different rules entirely. He wrote, The human species presents a unique challenge to our understanding of conflict dynamics. They possess no natural weapons, no armor, no toxic capabilities. By all standard measurements, they should rank among the weakest sapient species in the galaxy. Yet they consistently achieve outcomes that contradict this assessment. Velthar paused, remembering the sight of Doyen calmly telling a Kravik warrior to fill out forms. It still seemed impossible. I have concluded, he continued writing, that humans have weaponized inconvenience itself. They do not defeat opponents through superior force. They defeat them through superior patience and procedural complexity. The human named Doyen did not win his confrontation because he was stronger than the Kravik. He won because he made fighting him an exhausting, complicated, unrewarding experience. This represents a form of psychological warfare we have not previously encountered. He sent the report and waited. The response from the Hive Collective came within an hour, which was unusually fast. It consisted of a single question. Should we consider humans a threat? Velthar thought carefully before responding. Not in the traditional sense, but they will change how diplomacy functions in this sector. They are already changing it. In another part of the station in the medical bay, Hana was checking on Grath's recovery. He had no serious injuries, just bruises and sore muscles. But station regulations required a full medical evaluation before he could be released. Your knee is healing well, Hana said, examining the scan results. Should be back to normal in a few days. Grath sat on the medical platform, which had been reinforced to support his weight. He looked different than he had 3 days ago. Less angry, more thoughtful. When will I be released? He asked. That depends on the hearing, Hana explained. The station administrator needs to decide what happens next. You did break several laws, but since no one was seriously hurt and since you've been cooperative, it probably won't be too severe. Maybe a fine and deportation. Deportation, Grath repeated. Banned from the station. Probably just for a few years. Standard procedure for this kind of incident. Grath was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I want to speak to Doyen again. Hana looked surprised. Why? To apologize. And to understand. Understand what? How humans think. I have been fighting for most of my life. I thought I understood combat. But your species approaches it differently than anyone I have met. If I am to avoid future incidents, I need to learn. Hana considered this. I can arrange it. But Doyen might not want to see you. You did try to kill him. I know, Grath said. But I must try. That evening, Hana managed to convince Doyen to visit the medical bay. He came after his shift, still wearing his security uniform, looking tired. When he saw Grath, he stopped in the doorway. You wanted to talk? Doyen asked, his voice neutral. I wanted to apologize, Grath said. I came to your station seeking honor through combat. Instead, I brought chaos and destruction. This was wrong. Doyen studied him for a moment, then walked into the room and sat in one of the chairs. Apology accepted. Is that all? No. Grath leaned forward slightly. I want to understand. Why did you refuse to fight when I first challenged you? Was it truly because you were working? Yes, Doyen said simply, but I had come to kill you. You understood this, yes? Of course I understood. You weren't exactly subtle about it. Then why not fight immediately? Why wait? Why risk giving me an advantage? Doyen thought about how to explain. Because fighting you wasn't my job at that moment. My job was monitoring the diplomatic reception and making sure everything ran smoothly. Fighting a Kravik warrior wasn't in my job description. If I had engaged with you while I was on duty, I would have been acting outside my authority. That would have caused more problems. Grath's expression showed confusion. More problems than a Kravik destroying your hull? Different problems, Doyen clarified. If I had fought you while on duty, other humans would have questions. Why didn't I follow procedure? Why didn't I call for backup? Why did I take personal action instead of using station protocols? I would have had to answer those questions. It would have been complicated. So you waited until you were off duty, Grath said slowly, so that you could fight me without breaking your own rules. Exactly. Grath shook his head in disbelief. Your species values rules over survival. No, Doyen corrected. We value rules because they improve survival. Rules are how we organize society, how we prevent chaos. If everyone just did whatever they wanted whenever they wanted, civilization would collapse. So we make rules, and we follow them even when it's inconvenient. Even when someone is trying to kill you. Even then, Doyen confirmed. Besides, you weren't really trying to kill me at first. You were trying to challenge me. There's a difference. If you had actually attacked me without warning, without the whole dramatic entrance thing, I would have responded differently. This was interesting. Grath leaned forward more. How would you have responded? Doyen's expression became serious. I would have shot you. I carry a weapon. Most security officers do. If I had believed you were an immediate, unavoidable threat to my life or the lives of others, I would have used it, but you weren't. You were following your cultural practices, issuing a formal challenge. That gave me options. So I used them. The room was quiet for a moment. Hana, who had been standing quietly in the corner, finally spoke. I think what Doyen is saying is that humans are very good at reading situations and choosing appropriate responses. We don't have one way of dealing with threats. We have many ways and we pick whichever one seems most effective. Like choosing weapons, Grath said, understanding dawning. A hunter chooses different weapons for different prey. Something like that, Doyen agreed. Grath sat back processing this information. I am beginning to understand why other species find humans disturbing. You are unpredictable. We're actually very predictable, Doyen said. We just follow different patterns than most species expect. Once you understand the patterns, we make sense. And the pattern is rules and procedures? The pattern is problem solving, Doyen explained. Every situation is a problem. We analyze it, we consider our options. We choose the solution that makes the most sense. Sometimes that solution is violence. Sometimes it's paperwork. Sometimes it's throwing furniture. Whatever works. Grath made a sound that might have been a laugh. I will never look at furniture the same way again. Good, Doyen said with a slight smile. That was the point. They talked for a while longer. Grath asked questions about human culture, about Earth, about how humans viewed other species. Doyen answered honestly, explaining things in simple terms. By the end of the conversation, something had changed between them. Not quite friendship, but a mutual respect. As Doyen was leaving, Grath called out to him. If we meet again in different circumstances, I would like to share stories. Warriors should know each other, even if they are different kinds of warriors. Doyen paused at the door. I'd like that. But maybe next time we can skip the part where you try to kill me. Agreed, Grath said, and this time there was definitely humor in his voice. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic channels that connected hundreds of worlds, the story of the human and the Kravik was being discussed endlessly. Different species had different interpretations. The warrior cultures, like the Thurons, saw it as proof that humans were cowards who refused to fight with honor. They dismissed Doyen's tactics as beneath contempt. The prey species, like the small rabbit-like Quilons, saw it as brilliant survival strategy. They wanted to study human methods and possibly adopt some of them. The predator species, like the bird-like Talons, were fascinated and disturbed in equal measure. They recognized the effectiveness of Doyen's approach but found it fundamentally wrong somehow. And the peaceful species, like the energy beings called the Lumens, were simply confused. They didn't understand why the fight had happened at all, but everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity was more complicated than they had first appeared. In the administrative section of the station, Mina was giving a presentation to a group of ambassadors. The topic was understanding human conflict resolution. 20 different species had sent representatives to learn more. The key thing to understand, Mina explained, standing in front of a large display screen, is that humans have many different responses to threats. We don't have just one way of dealing with problems. We have hundreds of ways, and we've spent thousands of years developing them. She pulled up an image showing different human responses across history. Sometimes we fight with weapons. Sometimes we fight with words. Sometimes we fight with laws and regulations. Sometimes we fight by making the other side give up, because fighting us is too annoying. We're very flexible. An ambassador from the Thuron Empire raised a clawed hand. But this flexibility makes you unpredictable. How can we negotiate with beings who might respond to the same situation differently each time? 3 weeks had passed since the incident with Grath. The grand hall had been repaired. The cracked window had been replaced at considerable expense. The broken furniture had been cleared away. Everything looked normal again. But the station itself had changed in subtle ways. Security protocols had been updated. New forms had been created specifically for combat challenges. A small office near the Grand Hall entrance now bore a sign that read, Challenge Processing Department. And sitting at a desk in that office was Kyung, a young human who had arrived on the station just 2 days ago. Kyung was 23 years old, Fresh out of university, and this was her first real job. She had studied interspecies relations and thought working on a diplomatic station would be exciting. So far, her job consisted mostly of sitting at a desk and answering questions. From confused aliens who didn't understand why they needed to fill out forms to fight someone. It's not that complicated, she explained, patiently to a reptilian merchant who wanted to challenge a competitor. You fill out Form 27B, I process it. If both parties agree to the combat, we schedule it in one of the approved arenas. It usually takes 2 business days. 2 days? The merchant hissed in frustration. The insult was today. Honor demands immediate satisfaction. I understand, Kyung said, her tone sympathetic but firm. But station regulations require proper documentation. It's for everyone's safety. What if someone gets seriously hurt? We need records of consent, liability waivers, medical evaluations, official stuff. The merchant muttered something in his own language that definitely wasn't complimentary. But he took the datapad with the form and slithered away, defeated by paperwork before the fight even began. Kyung made a note in her log. 3rd challenge request today. None of them had actually followed through with the paperwork. She was beginning to understand why Doyen had created this system. It wasn't just about organization. It was about making fighting so inconvenient that most beings gave up before they started. Across the hall, preparations were underway for another diplomatic reception. Station Administrator Thexnell, a tall being with 4 arms and crystalline skin, was personally overseeing the setup. He was determined that this event would go smoothly. No more incidents, no more destroyed furniture, no more cracked windows. He had stationed extra security around the perimeter. He had reviewed all the guest lists personally. He had even had a conversation with Doyen about being proactive if any problems arose. Doyen had just looked at him and said, "Not my shift tonight. I'm off at 6. Some things never changed. The reception began at 7. Ambassadors and delegates arrived in small groups, talking quietly as they entered the hall. The atmosphere was more cautious than it had been 3 weeks ago. Everyone remembered what had happened last time. Hana stood near the refreshment table, wearing a dark blue dress instead of her usual lab coat. She was technically off duty too, but she had been invited as a guest. Several alien scientists wanted to discuss her recent paper on comparative respiratory systems. Doyen was across the room, exactly where he had been during the last reception. Same spot, same datapad, same board expression. The only difference was that his shift ended at 6 and it was now 7:15. He was here voluntarily, waiting for Hana to finish her conversation so they could leave together. Then the doors opened again. This time they didn't explode. But the being who entered commanded immediate attention nonetheless. Vexnor was a member of the Talon species, built like a predatory bird that had evolved to walk upright. He had a sharp beak, eyes that could spot movement from across a room, and claws on both his hands and feet. His feathers were deep red with black tips, colors that signified a warrior of high rank. He walked into the hall with deliberate steps, his head turning as he scanned the crowd. Everyone grew quiet, watching him. The Talons were known for their pride and their combat skills. When a Talon came looking for something, it was usually trouble. Vexnor's eyes found Doyen. He walked directly toward him, his talons clicking on the floor. Hana noticed and started moving toward them, ready to intervene if necessary. But Doyen just looked up from his datapad, saw Vexnor approaching, and waited. The Talon stopped a few feet away. "You are the human who defeated the Kravik warrior Grath," he said. His voice was sharp and clear, like the call of a hunting bird. "That's me," Doyen confirmed. "I am Vexnor of the Talon Empire. I have come to challenge you to single combat." Grath was weak and foolish. "I will prove that humans are not the fearsome opponents others now claim." The hall fell completely silent. This was exactly what everyone had been afraid of. Another challenge, another fight. More destroyed furniture and cracked windows. Doyen looked at Vexnor for a moment. Then he looked back at his datapad. "Not mine," he said calmly. Vexnor's feathers ruffled in surprise. "What? Not my problem," Doyen clarified. "I'm off duty. Have been for over an hour." He gestured across the hall toward Kyung's desk. "Challenges go through her now. We created a department for this." Every being in the hall turned to look at Kyung. She looked up from the book she was reading, saw dozens of eyes staring at her, and gave a small, nervous wave. Vexnor stared at Doyen in disbelief. "You refuse my challenge?" I'm not refusing anything. I'm telling you to follow proper procedure. Go to that desk over there. Fill out Form 27B. Submit it to the young woman sitting there. She'll process your request. This is absurd, Vexnor declared. I am here now. You are here now. Let us settle this matter with honor. Can't, Doyen said. I'm here as a guest tonight, not as a security officer. Guests aren't allowed to engage in combat on station property. It's in the regulations, Section 23. Plus, look around. He gestured at the repaired hall. We just fixed all this. I'm not breaking it again. Vexnor's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are all humans cowards? Do you hide behind rules because you lack the courage to fight? Probably, Doyen said, completely unbothered. But the rules are still the rules. You want to challenge me? Go fill out the form. Otherwise, please move along. You're blocking the refreshment table, and I was about to get a drink. For a moment, it seemed like Vexnor might attack anyway. His claws extended slightly. His feathers stood up, making him look larger. Several ambassadors backed away, preparing to run if violence erupted. But then Hana stepped forward, positioning herself between Vexnor and Doyen. She wasn't threatening or aggressive. She just stood there, calm and professional. Hi, she said with a pleasant smile. I'm Hana. You must be from the Talon Empire. I've read about your species. Your aerial combat techniques are supposed to be amazing. Vexnor looked down at her, confused by the sudden change in conversation. Yes, we are supreme hunters of the sky. That's so cool. I'd love to learn more about that. But right now you seem upset. Maybe I can help. She gestured toward Kyung's desk. The challenge process really isn't that bad. My friend Kyung over there is super nice. She'll explain everything. It's just paperwork. Takes like 10 minutes. I did not come here for paperwork, Vexnor said, his voice rising. I came to prove my strength against the human warrior. I understand, Hana said sympathetically. But Doyen isn't a warrior right now. He's just a guy trying to enjoy his evening off. Fighting him here would be like... She paused, thinking, like attacking someone in their home. That's not honorable, is it? Vexnor hesitated. Among the Talons, attacking someone in their dwelling was indeed considered dishonorable. Could the same principle apply here? This is not his home, Vexnor pointed out. No, but he's a guest here tonight, same as you. And there are rules about guests not fighting each other. Otherwise, every diplomatic reception would turn into a battle. That wouldn't work very well, would it? Kyung had gotten up from her desk and was walking over, carrying a datapad. She had watched the entire exchange and decided it was time to do her job. Excuse me, she said politely, approaching Vexnor. I couldn't help but overhear. You want to challenge Doyen to combat, right? Vexnor looked at her. This human was even smaller than Hana, barely reaching his chest. Yes, great. That's exactly what my department handles. She held up the datapad. I have the form right here. It's actually pretty straightforward. Just need some basic information. Your name, species, preferred combat style, any specific conditions you want to set. There's also a medical waiver section and a liability release. How long does this take? Vexnor asked, eyeing the datapad suspiciously. To fill out the form, about 10 minutes. To process and approve, usually 2 business days. Could be faster if both parties agree and there are no scheduling conflicts. 2 days? Vexnor's voice rose again. This is unacceptable. Combat must be immediate. Well, Kyung said thoughtfully, we could rush it. Emergency processing is available. That only takes 6 hours, but it costs extra, and you'd need a really good reason. Is there a really good reason this fight has to happen right now? Vexnor opened his beak to respond, then closed it again. What was his reason? Pride? Curiosity? The desire to prove himself? None of those sounded like good emergency justifications when said out loud. He defeated Grath. This shows humans may be dangerous. I must test this. Okay, Kyung said, making notes on the datapad. So this is more of a curiosity thing than an honor thing. It is an honor thing, Vexnor insisted.